Yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho. Gather up all of the crew, it's time to ship out Binks's brew. Yo ho ho, yo ho ho, yo ho. Boo! I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but it is Halloween. It's kind of the point of this. Okay. Well, hey everyone, how you doing? Vampire here. All my lights have gone out apparently, but it's cool. We got a flashlight or a torch, as you Brits might call it, so I think we'll be alright. Welcome back to the 6 nights of HOROWEEN, where we count down the 6 darkest moments of all of One Piece. And number 2, it shouldn't be anybody's surprise, really. Like, yeah, you would know what it is just from my creepy intro I did just now, my Ian Sinclair impression, but even without me doing that, I think it was pretty well established that Brook was going to be on the list. Mostly because a few episodes ago I said he was going to be on the list. But even before that, this is like one of the quintessential One Piece dark as hell moments, alright? Because it happens to a notable Straw Hat, and it really did seem like Oda just kept trying to up himself when it came to the depressing, dark, sad as hell backstories. You know what I mean? Like, oh, here's Usopp's backstory. His dad left him when he was really young and his mom died of a disease. Aw, boo-hoo, that's so sad. Here's Brook's. You're gonna need a mountain of tissues for this one. Okay, so, everybody that's a One Piece fan already knows about Brook's backstory, okay? I really, even if you're not, like, at that point to the manga yet, like, if you just started reading One Piece because people recommended it to you and you're not even up to Brook's arc yet, you still have probably heard through the grapevine what's up with Brook, okay? And if you haven't, well, strap in, seriously, get some tissues. You're gonna need them. Okay. So here's the situation with Brook, okay? Where do I even start with this? Okay, so, it starts off happy, like most dark things do. They start off really happy and bright at first, and then that just makes the plunge into the endless abyss even more, cringeworthy. Not cringeworthy like my kind of cringe, like the cringe like, you know, how they would advertise in old horror movies, like, you will cringe at the horror! You know, that kind of cringe. Okay, right, so Brook was originally a member of the Rumbars Pirates, a very merry crew that, all were musicians, and they would sing songs and make children happy, and that was kind of one of their things. But they were still pirates, and they were journeying through the West Blue, and they decided to, you know, let's take a crack at that Grand Line. Now, keep in mind, this was decades before Gold D. Roger found the One Piece and kicked off the Great Pirate Era, okay? Roger was around at this point, but he was just a rookie. Nobody even really, you know, barely knew about. Brook barely remembered him when he was brought up later. So, the Grand Line was much more dangerous back then than it is now. I mean, think of Paradise probably in the same light that the New World is painted right now, and you have a pretty good idea. Like, it was the pirate graveyard. Anybody that goes there is like, going to meet a horrible death, but Yorkie and the Rumbar Pirates were like, let's do it, man. Let's find some treasure and have the great pirate life, you know? So they head out to the Grand Line. They were accompanied by a tiny island whale by the name of Laboon, who just loved to swim alongside their ship and sing along, and, you know, he was separated from his own family, his pod, so they decided to, you know, take him with them. However, once they got to the Grand Line, though, unfortunately, they couldn't bring Laboon along because he was too tiny, and he was like, the Grand Line's a very dangerous place. So, they actually tried to leave him behind in the West Blue, but I guess he managed to get up through Reverse Mountain, and so they had to leave him with Crocus, and they made a promise to Laboon, like, someday we will come back here after finish sailing around, maybe like in a year or two, we'll be back to meet with you, Laboon. So, Laboon stayed there at the Twin Capes as the Rumbar ship sailed off into the distance. Now, the whole romanticization of the Grand Line and of the pirate life, that ended pretty damn quick, because there was a massive disease at one point that wiped out half the crew, Yorkie included, so Brook became the new captain, separated the crew in half. You know, the half that had the disease stayed behind, and the other ones that got back on the ship, and Yorkie was like, you need to continue the journey, Brook. You need to do it. So Brook was like, yes, Captain, I'll do this. So they are now down half their number. They're sailing through the Grand Line, and at some point they run afoul an enemy that used his poison weapons. Some people have actually hypothesized hypothesized that the enemy they ran across was in fact the Germa Double Six, because we know the Germa use poison weapons as well. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That's kind of not really the point of this story. The point of the story is they all get poisoned and they die, which would be dark enough, except there was a few things here. Number one, Brook had actually previously consumed the Yomi Yomi, or the Revive fruit, which guarantees him a second life after death. Granted, he was a little dubious about that because, he's never died before, so they were all on the deck, shot with poison arrows, and the ship was ruined and in tatters, the rudder was destroyed, and they're just sitting there on the wreck of a ship, just basically waiting to die, and somebody brings up, it's like, hey, Brook, you're gonna come back, right? And Brook's like, I don't know, maybe, I hope so. And so another thing that's keeping them, that keeps them going for a little longer is Laboon. And so you have this really tearjerker of a moment where all of the crew are just kind of sitting around. They don't even barely have enough energy to stand. They're just on the deck of the ship, just lying and like, oh, that's right, Laboon. Oh, he's still waiting for us. Shit. And so Brook comes up with an idea. He comes up with the idea of, hey, I don't know if I'm going to come back after death. I don't know if a devil fruit is capable of straight up resurrecting me, but I'll tell you something. What if it does? Because it's the best shot we got. What if that fruit brings me back from the dead and I can somehow make it back to Laboon? What do you think I should tell him? Do you think I should go to him and tell him about how we all died and it was a horrible fucking travesty? Or how about we sing one last song as the Rumbar Pirates? And I take that to him, and I play that to him as the last parting gift of the Rumbar pirate crew. And so even though they're poisoned, and they're just minutes away from death, they all manage to get up, or some of them can't even stand. They prop them up like, come on, buddy, we can do this one last concert. So they get up, and then Brook shambles over to the piano, and they start singing. They pick up their instruments, and they're like putting every last ounce of energy they have in their body. I've never been poisoned before, but I can imagine it's not a very pleasant experience. I can imagine it's nausea, and just lightheadedness, and blurry vision, and just maybe your fingers, your arms are going numb. You ever try to play a violin while your hands are numb and shaking? But these guys managed to do it. They freaking pulled, they did the best they could, and they start singing the age-old pirate song, Bink's Sake, or Bink's Brew in the English translations, okay? And actually, both translations do a great job. I mean, if you listen to Bink's Sake in the Japanese or Bink's Brew in the English dub, they do a pretty respectful version of the song, okay? So, and Ian Sinclair is a marvelous voice actor for Brook. They couldn't have found anybody better. But anyway, they start singing this song, right? And it is like a juxtaposition of this happy, cheery crew, and you get flashbacks of them hanging out with Laboon and everything, and it's mixed with images of the old tattered pirate ship. Like they're singing the song like, yo ho ho, yo ho ho ho. That's what you hear, but in the anime they show you like the poison everywhere. There's blood all over the place. The flag is in tatters, almost like in that, like, I think it's less than 5 minutes is that song. In less than 5 minutes, they decide, let's just pretend none of this happened. Let's just go to a cheery, happy place. And because Brook is going to hear, because Laboon is going to hear this. Brook is going to bring Laboon this song. We can't just half-ass this. We can't just be like, yo ho ho, yo ho ho. No, we have to bring it. We have to make it look like we are happy, we are cheery, because the Laboon has been waiting for so long to hear this song, and he's probably going to have to wait for longer so Brook can bring it to him. They probably didn't think that even if this did work, they'd have to wait as long as they did, 50 plus years. But they're like, we gotta just give every ounce of our strength. And so it's this beautiful moment where they're all singing up until their last breath, and people, this is the dark part. This is where we start getting into the dark part, okay? The song starts off as all the members of the crew singing along, and then slowly but surely, each member of the crew starts dropping, because they were all poisoned around the same time. So they start dropping like flies, like one after another. Sometimes while they're in mid-sentence, like, time to ship offerings, and they just fall. Okay, their eyes just go white and they collapse. Most of them with a smile on their face because they died knowing that at least one day Brook will hear this last song that they sang. But the darkest part is when it gets down to like 4 people. It's down to 4. Brook is on piano, and then 3, people that are playing instruments like violin and stuff. And then Brook is like, it's down to a quartet. And then another person drops. Trio. Another person drops. Do it. And he starts crying because he says he's not even looking up. He's not even like, you know, he's like, oh, I'm just hearing them drop at this point. Their body, their stiffened corpses just slapping into the ground, hitting the freaking wood planks. He's like, and then the last person drops and he's like, Solo. So it actually is kind of dark. He was the last person to die out of everybody. But then he eventually, of course, dies as well. He stops playing and he collapses. And by the way, have any of you actually, this is made even darker if you actually know the lyrics of Bink Sake. If anybody, I know that, you know, we all know the basic beat of the song, you know, and it contains copious amounts of yo ho ho ho. Do you ever actually read the lyrics of Bink Sake? It's not a dark song. It's not a sad song. It's really cheery. Okay, it's a song about, you know, we're setting out to sea, the golden seas await us, the voyage never ends. There's a bit in there about, like, the birds are singing and it's fun, you know, like something akin to that. Like, it's a new adventure, we're sailing out. Imagine singing that song while you're poisoned and everyone around you everyone that you know and love is dying. Just like, it's hard to maintain that level of happiness, you know? Kind of reminds me of, you know, the Ring Around the Rosie. Ring Around the Rosie is a song that children sing, but it's about the freaking Black Death. You know, it's just dark origins here. So it's made even darker when you realize all these people are dying on this destroyed ship. They're poisoned. Blood is everywhere. Some of their members are already dead, including the ship's doctor. He was dead as well. But then they start singing this happy, cheery song. You know, and it would be like, you know, your last 5 minutes on Earth and you're going to die in this excruciating way, but then you start singing like, happy birthday to you, happy birthday. It would be disturbing, you know? So, now that was dark enough. If you just left it at that, Oda, that's dark enough. But no, we can crank up that dial a little bit higher, can't we, Brook? Dial it up even higher. Have Brook do indeed come back from the dead, but his soul gets lost in the sea of fog, and he can't make it back to his ship until a year later when his body is a freaking skeleton. You know, it's been picked clean by the birds and the vultures or whatever, and the elements. So, thanks to the nature of the Yomi Yomi no Mi, he came back in his skeleton form, and he still, you know, he could still walk and talk and see and hear, even though he doesn't have the eyes or anything. He's still a living being, but he can't go anywhere. He's stuck on the ship. The rudder is destroyed. The ship is in already really bad condition. And he's stuck in the Florian Triangle of all places. It would be one thing if he was out in open water, but he was stuck in the Devil's Sea, where his ship is just basically forced to drift in fog for God knows how long. So this is something that really brings it to the head, to the peak, and it's isolation. You know, I mentioned a few days ago when I did my video on Impel Down, Geography, I talked about how, you know, hell was laid out like the Inferno in Dante Alighieri's, you know, in the Inferno, the Divine Comedy. Something I forgot to mention about that was the lowest level of hell, the 9th level, where Satan is held. Satan's actual punishment is just isolation, being frozen in a lake, and he's just, you know, left to himself. There's nobody to interact with, nobody to torture him, but he's just left to himself, and that is the true ultimate torture that you can give. And that's what Dante was saying, right? So, this is Brook on a ship, not being able to go anywhere, just drifting, with the corpses of all of his friends. For 50 years. I am 25 years old. So this would be double my existence. Every single thing that's happened in my life times 2. Alone. 100%. Entirely alone. Not even like a doggy friend or somebody to, you know, be a companion to you. Just no one is on this ship except dead people. Including Brook himself, technically. Now, this is something that, you know, once again, Oda, it's 50 years, so he can't properly show, like, every single passing year, but you can imagine Brook probably got to a point rather early on where he just lost it. Because I can imagine that. I mean, this is a weird reference, but just bear with me. Anybody ever see Ben 10? Yeah, I think it was in Alien Force, or maybe the Ultimate Alien. No, it was in Alien Force. It was in Alien Force. We meet a character named Paradox, and Paradox is basically like the Doctor from Doctor Who, where he's able to like he can transport through time and stuff. And there's this interesting line that he says that I always remembered. It's where he gets like stuck in this time rift for like an absurdly long amount of time, and he says, "Eventually, I went insane." But I even got bored with that, and I regained my sanity. That's what he says. Like, I got so bored of being insane that I became sane again. I could see that with Brook. I could see that with after being stuck in this body on this ship for maybe, I don't know, 5 years. Just imagine that. Now, he doesn't have to eat because he's a skeleton. He doesn't need to eat or drink anything, which is actually probably a good thing, because like if he came back in his regular body, he might have needed to, if he came back right away, he might need to eat and drink and, you know, do all that stuff. But he didn't need to worry about that. But imagine just like, hell, not even a year. Imagine a week. Imagine 1 week of your life just stuck with no human interaction. You would go insane. I think there were things like, there's creepypastas written about this. Look up the Russian sleep experiment. That's not exactly the same thing, but still pretty freaky. Yeah, so a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Probably didn't take very long for Brook just to lose it. All right? And maybe he spent a few decades aboard the ship just like a blithering mess, just sitting on the ground, just like, my friends died. They all died. They all died. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. And in the anime, they show like Brook constantly having hallucinations, seeing his crew. How many times did that probably happen? How many times did Brook, you know, he could still fall asleep. He's still capable of sleep. He just doesn't need it to survive. How many times did he fall asleep and wake up and hear his, "Oh, hey, Brook, how you doing? Oh, you're sleeping. Come on, get your lazy bones up." And he's back in his regular body, and everyone's happy and singing, and he's like, "Guys, I missed you so much." Then he realized he was dreaming, and he wakes up properly. That must have happened so many times. So many times. It might have even gotten to the point where he woke up and he saw that, and he's like, "I know you're not real, but it's the only, my dreams are the only place where I can be happy." And so that goes on for decades and decades and decades and decades, until finally he runs aground on Thriller Bark. The ship just happened to drift close to Thriller Bark. He gets there, finally gets some human interaction, and what happens? He gets his shadow stolen. So that's just like rubbing salt in the wound. Screw, that's not even rubbing salt in the wound. That's lopping off your arm, shoving salt in that wound, taking it out, properly treating it, having the wound heal, and then a year later lopping off the remaining skin and then shoving more salt into it. Gets his shadow stolen by Moria, gets the crap beat out of him by Ryuma, and his force, the only thing he can do is retreat back to the corpse ship. Eventually, 5 years after that, after another 5 years of like, I lost my shadow, I couldn't even find my way out of this fucking sea. After 5 years of that, he finally runs across the Straw Hats, and his 5 decades of pure and utter, unabashed suffering can end. He gets his shadow back, Zoro defeats Ryuma, they manage to get the hell out of the Florian Triangle, he has friends, they go on adventures, they go and break up Duval's little racket, they're sailing, they're having fun, Brook is singing a song, they go to Sabaody, they're enjoying the bubbles and everything, and then they get separated again! And he gets sent to one, at least the place he gets sent by Kuma is a place that's like, at least has other people for him to interact with. It's a depressing island where there's just a bunch of poverty and he worshipped as Satan, but at least it's something. At least it's better than that. But still, that was pretty dark too. Like 2 weeks after the Straw Hats managed to liberate him from Thriller Bark, he ends up getting separated from them. But hey, eventually he at least becomes the shining star, and this was mentioned later by Frankie, like, he rose up from the fogs of that sea and became a shining star, which is what Brook really, that's what he has to be, right? He's the Soul King, after all. Oh, God. Yeah, so that is probably, I would be completely understanding if you put that as #1 on your list, like the most depressing moment in all of One Piece, just compounded from every single thing he went through. You know, let's go down the list one more time as we close it out. Like, having to leave Laboon behind, losing Yorkie and half the crew, getting poisoned, realizing your inevitable death and that you won't be able to get let back to Laboon, singing a happy, cheery song when all of you are dying, finally listening to how all of your members of the crew are just passing out one at a time, and you're the only one left, and then you die, realizing that you can come back from the dead only to find out that you get lost, having to wander around the fog for an entire year as a disembodied soul, finally finding your body after that entire year only to find that you are now a skeleton, getting into your body only to realize that the ship is stuck, you can't go anywhere, and now you're stuck on the ship with a bunch of rotted crew members of your former friends and, you know, everyone that you ever cared about, and getting to deal with that for 50 years, getting off of the ship to find Thriller Bark only to get your shadow stolen and get beaten the crap out of you by a samurai zombie, so it made things worse, having to retreat back to the ship you just spent 45 years on, not wanting to go back on it, getting to finally find people that, you know, truly cherish you, and you get out of the island only to be separated from them. How many was that? Was that like 9 things? I feel like that was like at least 9 or 10 things. All right, but I don't think there's anything more to say about Brook. At least everything's good right now, I hope. I hope this isn't like a thing where it's like, no, I think Brook can suffer even more. We're gonna give him at least a good 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and then have him get separated from the crew again. Or how about this? The ultimate in darkness. All right, there's a few of these, but the image where Brook is actually going to outlive all of the crew, and the scene where Brook is in front of all of the different Straw Hats' graves, and he's the last one living, and he's just playing a song for his friends. I don't think Oda would show that, but it's Oda. He might. That's the epilogue of One Piece. That's the last scene of One Piece. Last thing of One Piece is like, everyone's happy, they found the One Piece, and then last panel, 75 years later, Brook's just sitting there in front of the... Okay. Well, this is sufficiently dark. I don't... crap. Advanced darkness.